You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta and part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Grant McAuley, Jake Mastroianni with you after what was almost another just dramatic comeback for this Atlanta Braves club, but unfortunately they came up a run short in the opener of a four-game set against the New York Mets by an 8-7 final score. It was the Mets who found the late runs they needed to grab a win over the Atlanta Braves to open up this series at Truist Park on a night in which the Braves were celebrating one of the legends of baseball, the 50th anniversary of Henry Aaron's 715th home run. The Braves weren't able to have those heroics pull out that victory and give Hank that one more win on a night in which I think all of the baseball world can appreciate the greatness that was Henry Aaron. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but we got a lot to talk about when it comes to this game and, of course, getting you set for Game 2 of the series, which will be happening on Tuesday. Before we get started, I want to remind you to subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta right here on YouTube. Leave us those likes and comments. Make sure you share the show with a friend and subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts as well. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. That is promo code LOCKEDONMLB in the Prize Picks app. You know, Jake, we've seen this Atlanta Braves club in the not-too-distant past, in fact, over the weekend, come up with some pretty crazy late rallies. It felt like, just for a moment, maybe we're going to get another one of those.
It certainly did. I mean, you obviously know, and Brian Snitker says it all the time, can never count these guys out. And I'm not going to lie, they went down 3 late. It just felt like it wasn't their night. It ended up that was the case, but still got really close there at the end. Some really good swings in that 9th inning that, again, we've talked about it. Maybe on a warmer night, those balls go a little bit further, and the Braves are sitting here celebrating a walk-off hit, but it just wasn't meant to be on this night.
No, it was a very good night for Marcell Ozuna in terms of the first couple of at-bats. Then he had to go through what a lot of Braves hitters went through, which was a questionable at best strike zone, and that's how I'll term it for now. I'm sure we'll get into it as we roll on here on the Braves POSTCAST, but so close to a 2-run homer in the 9th inning. The ball would have been gone in 24 out of 30 parks, but Truist Park, not one of those on this night, unfortunately, and the Braves' late rally just kind of fizzled out, and 8-7 was that final score. You know, Charlie Morton, let's talk a little bit about him. We'll get into it more as we jump inside the game in the next segment, but it seemed like that early lead might be just everything that he needed, but all of a sudden the command kind of eluded Charlie Morton, and in doing so, he really started to pour a little gasoline on the fire for the Mets offense, and quite frankly, as we've seen this year, runs have been a little bit harder to come by for that group, so you didn't want to help them out.
Yeah, and that's the key there. We talked about this yesterday with Charlie Morton. One issue that he still has at this point in his career, or seems to be getting maybe a little bit worse at this point in his career, is the walks and the command. And I felt like early on it was okay, but as the game went on, just seemed to really lose the fastball command in particular. I thought the curveball looked pretty good for the most part. But with this Mets team, it's been the same thing for years now. You have to throw strikes. You have to make them beat you. They're going to fight. They're going to battle up there, foul off a ton of pitches like they did in this one. And you just got to continue to make good pitches. And Charlie just wasn't able to do that. But when you give them free base runners like that, even an offense that's been struggling as much as they have, eventually going to come through. And on this night, Brandon Nimmo came through quite a few times.
Yeah, it was Brandon Nimmo's night for sure. 4 for 4 with a walk, 2 home runs, 5 runs knocked in, 2 more runs scored. So he certainly led this Mets offense. And even late, Pierce Johnson threw a lot of curveballs in his inning and threw one that I think he'd like to have back. DJ Stewart with a 2-run homer was part of a 3-run 8th inning rally that put the Mets ahead for good. But you're right. This is a lineup that, even though they have not put forth the numbers that would, underscore the kind of success that they'd like to have, the kind of success that, say, the Braves offense is able to have on a pretty nightly basis, it's still a professional lineup, and there are a lot of professional at-bats in there, and you've got to be able to execute. You talked about Charlie Morton's fastball command not being there. One thing that makes his secondary so dangerous, that curveball so dynamic, is when you can get ahead of hitters and they have to expand their zone, and I just feel like the Mets were kind of able to zero in on Charlie, or at least wait him out, and were able to get some extra base runners and then get some hits when they needed to, when there was just really nothing else Charlie Morton could do but finally come over the plate and he got hurt.
Yeah, and again, that's the key to this Mets offense is, that you can get them out, certainly, as we've seen happen this year, but you make a mistake, as you said, the professional hitters, they're going to get it done, and Charlie Morton just wasn't able to make enough of those. But that curveball, like I said, I mean, at times it looked really good. I thought he had 7 whiffs on it, 25 swings. You'll see better nights than that for Charlie Morton, but just 1 whiff on that fastball with 14 swings, and somebody that has a good fastball. And like I said, when the curveball is on point, he gets even more than that on that 4-seamer, but just wasn't able to get it up there. And the velocity looked really good on it. And like I said, in the first couple innings, I felt like he had pretty good control of it. And who knows what effect that long inning had for the Braves, where they put up that 4 spot. He's a veteran. I feel like he knows how to navigate that and work through it and still be able to. But I mean, it did seem to coexist or coincide with the time that he lost his command a little bit as well going forward. But, a 4-run lead there for Charlie Morton against Julio Teheran and the Mets. I feel like that needs to be a win. You got your veteran pitcher out there. He's got to be able to barrel down there and get some outs and get through 5-6 innings. Almost made it through 6 innings still. Yeah. But he's got to be able to find a way to navigate that when his team puts up that 4 spot early. Needs to be, a pretty stress-free win for the Atlanta Braves when they're able to do that, and just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, you would hope so. The 4 runs for the Braves coming in the bottom of the 3rd inning. We'll talk a little bit about that and the Braves offense, which was very much in force here in the opener of this 4-game series. But a run in the 4th, 3 more in the 5th. And of course, Brandon Nimmo was the guy who was in the middle of the things that were going on or going right for this New York Mets club. But for Charlie Morton, 5 walks in this game. 3 of those came into scores. So I think it kind of underscores the point that we were both making, which is, if you're unable to, put these guys away and you give them extra runners and extra outs, you're going to end up in trouble no matter what the lineup's numbers look like at any point in the season. That is just kind of the game of baseball. Any team can beat any other team on a given night. Nobody's going 162-0. If you want more cliches, well, tune in next time. I'll try to have some for the next Braves postcast. Just not the night for Charlie Morton in terms of being sharp. Not as crisp as he was certainly against the Chicago White Sox in his first start of the year. And the Braves' early lead, that 4-run rally in the 3rd inning, highlighted by a Marcell Ozuna home run. And we're going to talk a lot about him as we continue as well. Was not able to stand up. The Braves, though, did make a push late, but it was unfortunately the Braves bullpen that took some lumps in this game after 13 2/3 scoreless innings in a sweep of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Pierce Johnson, and to a lesser extent, Jesse Chavez, who did inherit a runner that was eventually charged to Pierce Johnson in that 3-run 8th inning. Just unable to get those outs, hold that game right where it was, and give the Braves offense that opportunity that, as we saw in the 9th inning, is very much, it's dangerous, this Braves club. If you give them that chance and you leave that door cracked, the Braves might just kick it down, and they almost did it tonight.
They certainly did, and that's, again, what we've come to expect. But rough night for the bullpen in particular. A.J. Minter, who really just made one mistake. I mean, a fastball right down the middle to Nimmo. I thought outside of that, it was actually a really good outing for Minter, but Nimmo certainly was on it tonight, and you just can't make that mistake down the heart of the plate to him. But other than that, I thought Minter was pretty good. Now, Johnson was pretty good for the most part too, but again, he just made a mistake, left a curveball middle. I mean, you go look at the map on MLB Game Day there, both of those pitches, the one that Minter threw to Nimmo and the one that Johnson threw to Stewart, those pitches are right in that middle square. So again, as rough as start as it's been with this Mets offense, you just can't throw pitches like that to major league hitters and get away with it very often. So a tough night for both of those guys, but this bullpen's been so good. It's just kind of a blip on the radar for these guys. The one that really hurts, so like you talked about, is that add-on run that they got. Brandon Nimmo again, just putting one in play and driving in that extra run after Jesse Chavez came in, ended up being the difference in the ball game. So that's the one that really hurts. You'd love to see them shut things down after that Stewart home run, but weren't able to do so.
Yeah, and you talked about him, 5 RBIs for Brandon Nimmo. He's kind of the thorn in Atlanta's side. The 2 home runs, that one you mentioned, A.J. Minter, I'm glad you brought that up. That was after the Braves had taken a 5-4 lead back. The Mets had an answer for that, and then they had an even bigger rally in the 8th inning to put them ahead for good. We got a lot more to talk about on this edition of the Braves Postcast. As we continue on, we will get inside the box score and look at what the Braves offense did, talk a little bit more about what didn't go right for Charlie Morton, talk about our old friend Julio Teheran as well. And, of course, we're going to get you set for Game 2 of this series and talk a little bit about Hank Aaron as well. It was a big night for him at the ballpark as we celebrated the 50th anniversary of home run number 715. All of that is coming your way on the Braves Postcast as we continue. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. Spring training is over. Baseball season officially underway over a week now. So don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Picks entry today. Download the app. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's Locked On MLB on the Prize Picks app. So a tough night for the Braves and an 8-7 loss to the New York Mets in the first of a 4-game series. Charlie Morton staked to a 4-0 lead. As we talked about, the walks, a big problem for him. 5 of those in this game, as the Atlanta Braves had given him an early advantage, but they weren't able to hold on to that, was Charlie Morton and the Braves bullpen, which took some lumps as well in this one. And if you look at the line score for the New York Mets, 8 runs, 11 hits, no errors. Braves 7 runs on 12 hits, no errors for them. The winning pitcher is Jake Diekman. He's now 1-0, and Pierce Johnson takes the loss. He drops to 2-1 on the year. He already has 3 decisions in the Braves' first 9 games. That's just kind of baseball in 2024. A lot of those vulture wins and a few of those losses that get hung on you as well. Braves and Mets played, I wouldn't say the most clean game of 2024. We knew with Julio Teheran, I've seen him enough over the years to know he might have a little bit of luck kind of staying in and around the zone early, but eventually, Jake, when you go through this Braves lineup that second time, they pretty much had Julio Teheran figured out. I think that maybe one of the biggest calls that went in the Mets' favor in this game, in addition to some of the just awful ball and strike calls that were happening late in the game, seemingly to Atlanta quite a bit, was going ahead and pulling Julio Teheran in that third inning. I know you didn't want to do it if you're the New York Mets, but it turned out that was able to kind of halt the momentum of the Atlanta Braves and give their bats a chance to go to work against Charlie Morton.
Yeah, the bats are seeming to figure out the veteran and Julio Teheran, like you said, that second time through, and felt like they were about to go on and put up an even bigger number. But the Mets kind of pulled the plug there on a night where they were missing a lot of their key relievers. You notice that when Diaz didn't come in to close it out, they're missing some of their other top relievers as well. But they were able to kind of settle things down. Nobody had a big blow-up inning. I mean, 3 of the 5 relievers they used did give up a run, but nobody gave up more than that. So they were able to kind of limit the damage against a really good Braves offense. But Julio, he had a good first trip through the order, was able to stay on the edges, like you said, but it's kind of like Bryce Elder. It's not somebody that can live over the middle of the plate. He has some good movement. He knows how to pitch, but he has to stay on the edges. Anything over the middle of the plate is typically going to get hit pretty hard. And that's the case for a lot of pitchers, but especially when you don't have that high velocity to back it up, you just can't get away with that. And so Braves hitters second time through had some better at bats, some longer at counts, and ended up getting some good pitches and getting to him and knocking him out of the game. But yeah, you make a good point there. I think the Mets bullpen, even without some key guys, were able to kind of just hold things together just enough to hold off the Atlanta Braves offense.
Yeah, you really wouldn't expect it. And you brought up, and they talked about a little bit late in the broadcast, would we see Edwin Diaz at all in a safe situation, or was it going to be Drew Smith or bust? And then as we found out, they did decide to make a pitching change, but it was not Diaz who was closing out this game. Overall, for the Mets bullpen, as you look at what they were able to do after Teheran gave up those 4 runs, yeah, there was some ninth inning trouble for Jorge Lopez, but otherwise, Drew Smith, who crashed into a camera, that was pretty crazy in that play. I kind of wondered if maybe he was going to be a little bit worse for the wear, but he was able to get out of some trouble in the 8th inning and limit some damage there. He had a couple of strikeouts in that frame. Jacob Diekman, he worked himself into a bit of trouble as well in that inning. Braves were able to get one on a bases-loaded walk to Ozzy Albies, who got the scoring started on this night with a 2-run single as part of that 4-run third inning. Marcell Ozuna, that 2-run homer as well in the third that had the Braves up early, but unable to cash in were the Braves late in the game on some opportunities I think that they love to have another crack at. Travis d'Arnaud had a go-ahead RBI double in the 6th inning, nearly got one out into the gap as the final out of the game, but it was corralled out in center field by who else but Brandon Nimmo. And if you look in that 8th inning that went sideways on Pierce Johnson, he was charged with 3 runs on 3 hits and a walk, including that home run to DJ Stewart, a 2-run shot, his first hit of the year, and a big one for the New York Mets there. Jesse Chavez was able to pretty much hold the Mets in check. He did give up the inherited runner. The Albies walk scored a run, but the Braves stranded a couple in that frame. And then the Braves were going for it in the 9th, as they always do. Matt Olson, opposite field double, scores on the Harris single, but between those two at-bats, was the Marcell Ozuna fly ball to deep left field. Looked like his second 2-run homer of the night, but it was dragged in out there at the wall. That's a home run in 24 out of 30 parks. I feel like we just had this discussion a couple of days ago. Eventually, once the weather gets, I think, more to the Atlanta norm, maybe a couple of these balls are going to at least sneak over the wall.
I certainly hope so, and that's typically the case in what happens throughout the year. You see it with a lot of teams, but particularly the Braves, who, we've said early on, a lot of these doubles are going to turn into home runs. We know that as things warm up a little bit. I think Ozuna thought he got that one. Great play by Tyrone Taylor there in left field to catch that one at the wall. It's kind of in that area, too, where the fence goes down just a little bit as well, but it was a great catch there and really a game-saving catch for the New York Mets. But Marcell Ozuna, I mean, the tear that he is on to begin this season, I mean, the only thing that can really stop him right now is a pitch that's 4 inches below the zone that somehow gets called a strike. That's about the only thing that gets him at this moment, but he is absolutely just crushing the baseball. And then a tough one for Travis d'Arnaud as well, the last out of the game. He really stung that one. Thought it might get off that right field wall, but unfortunately just didn't carry quite enough.
No, it did not. Junior Valentine, the home plate umpire in this game. I had to look at the notes here. A lot of times, you can kind of see that it'll cut both ways as far as the strike zone or the home plate umpire is concerned. It just felt like maybe the Braves were getting the shorter end of that stick, though, late in this one. But it's one of the things that you can't control, but it does change the outcome of a lot of at-bats. I know C.J. Nitkowski and Jeff Francoeur talked about that on the Valley Sports broadcast. There's a big difference in being ahead 1-0 and behind 0-1. And that may seem pretty obvious, but it does immediately put you on the defensive. And I think we saw that play out in some of those late at-bats in particular.
Yeah, the Austin Riley bat is the big one. You had bases loaded, 2 outs, Riley coming up, and first pitch of the at-bat looked a little high to me, called strike one. Then he chases the slider off the plate, and next thing you know, you're 0-2 in a big spot like that. Right. So that's one of those situations. Look, who knows if that really changes the outcome of anything, but it certainly did change that at-bat.
You just have to kind of wonder. And I do think going back and looking at it, that might have clipped the top of the zone, but the strike zone in general was so erratic on both sides, up and down. It was really hard to know exactly what to expect to be called a strike or called a ball. Then I think we saw Matt Olson take one that clipped the top of the zone easily that was called a ball. So the consistency certainly not there, but this is not the umpire's postcast. It's the Braves postcast. That was just one part of the game and something that was not really going in Atlanta's favor. Looking inside the box score, Ozzy Albies was 2 for 4 on this night, knocked in 3 runs, had that walk as well. Matt Olson with a double and a run scored. 2 more hits for Marcell Ozuna, batting .325 on the year, and OPS just shy of 1,100. His 5th home run of the season as part of that 4-run third inning, and nearly had his 6th home run a little bit later in that game, and one that would have changed the complexion entirely had he been able to do that. But Jake, I know, and I talked about this over the weekend as well, so I hate to be a broken record about this, but Marcell Ozuna's start to 2024, night and day difference from what it was in 2023. It's hard to believe he's even the same player that he was in 21 and 22 and the first month of 23. That's how much Marcell Ozuna has changed the course of not just his season a year ago, but possibly his entire career.
Yeah, I mean, it's gone from how can we get rid of this contract to how can we fit in this $16 million team option for next year, which looks really good and promising at this point. But he has been on some kind of tear. I mean, I think he was easily, in my opinion, at least in the National League, the best DH in baseball last year, even though he didn't make the all MLB team, which is still just absurd to think about. But I mean, he has just been incredible. And like I said, I think it's more the fact that he should become more of a well-rounded hitter overall. I mean, he'll take his singles. I think it was the first at bat of this game. It's a ball he just, drove up the middle, line drive to center field for a really solid hit. And then he's obviously got that power. You throw one inside to him, he can turn on it as well as anyone in the game. And I really thought he had that home run of the 9th inning. That one's going to haunt him, I think, in his sleep tonight, because I believe he thought it was gone. I thought it had a chance there at the end, but just not meant to be. But I mean, what a turnaround that he's had, again, from somebody that maybe was close to just getting cut altogether. And now it's looking like his team option may be picked up for another year.
Yeah, I think it's hard to even consider not picking it up if he's able to turn in another season that looks anywhere close to last year. If he hits 270 with 30 homers and 90-plus runs batted in, which batting 5th in this Braves order, if you're healthy, you're knocking in at least 90 runs, in my opinion, especially if you hit those 30 bombs. But Ozuna appears to be exactly what he showed last year over the final 5 months. And I'm really, fascinated to, once we get to the end of April, to throw out last year's April and look at what was a full 162 game sample for him, because I think those numbers are going to be absolutely crazy at this point. But we'll get to that a little bit later this month. So 2 hits for Ozuna in this one, 2 more hits for Michael Harris, who also walks on base 3 times. 3-hit night for Orlando Arcia. Travis d'Arnaud with a run knocked in on his base hit to put the Braves ahead, that double. Jared Kelenic did walk in this one, so he extended his on-base streak, but he struck out 3 times in this game. The first time that we've seen this season where the strikeouts, and again, some of the edges might have been a little bit in question, at least late in the game, but either way, for the most part, Kelnic's done a really nice job of putting the bat on the ball, and that was something, of course, he wanted to work on quite a bit after his Seattle Mariners days. So that's a look at what was going on with the Braves offense. There was a lot to like, but just not enough to beat the Mets in this 8-7 loss. When we come back, we will talk about Game 2 of the series, which happens on Tuesday night at Truist Park, a 7:20 first pitch, as Reynaldo Lopez makes his first start in a Braves uniform at home and second appearance since joining the Braves overall. We'll talk about what he needs to do, and the Braves will be facing Adrian Hauser of the New York Mets. And we'll also talk a little bit more about Henry Aaron. It was a big night at Truist Park, celebrating home run number 715, which happened 50 years ago on Monday. All of that will come your way as the Braves postcast continues. We have all been there trying to navigate that tiny map or pick from a list, and you just aren't sure if the seats are good, if the price is right, or if you can find the best deal. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. If you want the best deal, prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. How cool is that? So you find those last-minute deals, those all-in prices, you get views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, and it's not just baseball. Game Time's last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. For a limited time, all users can get $20 off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Game Time app with the code FIRSTPITCH. Terms apply. That's code FIRSTPITCH, FIRSTPITCH, for $20 off from March 25th to April 14th only. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Jake, let's look ahead to Tuesday, Game 2 of this series between the Braves and the Mets. As I mentioned, Reynaldo Lopez will be on the mound against Adrian Hauser. The Atlanta offense will look to do exactly what it did in Game 1, just score at least one more run than the New York Mets. That's the goal. That gets you back in the win column. Reynaldo Lopez, I thought, looked really good against his old team, the Chicago White Sox. What do you expect out of Reynaldo in his first start at Truist Park?
Hopefully a little bit more of the same you want to see against this Mets lineup, which again, and we've talked about, I know they've had their struggles, but they have a lot of professional hitters up there. And with a guy who's primarily 2 pitches, how long can he get through this Mets lineup? How long can he keep them off balance with those 2 pitches? What does that velocity look like? Those are still questions for me with Lopez going into his second start. What do they look like as the game goes deeper? And, in my mind with Reynaldo Lopez, I know he's kind of pushed up as a 4 starter now, but he's somebody, if you can give me 5 solid innings, the bullpen again had a bad night, but you still got a lot of arms there that I think are going to be fresh and available, minus Pierce Johnson and Jesse Chavez. But you can give me 5 solid innings. I think the offense has a good chance to put up another big number like they did this night, and hopefully give the Braves a chance to win. But I'm still just looking for more of Lopez in terms of what does the command look like? How does he look deeper into the outing? How long can he go? Can he mix in that changeup a little bit more? Those are still some of the questions that I'm hoping to get answered from Reynaldo Lopez.
Well, we saw 6 innings of 1-run ball in Chicago. I mean, I thought that was a good outing overall. The 1 run that scored happened in that last frame, and it really wasn't because he got hit altogether that hard. It was just a well-placed base hit that allowed the White Sox to get on the board against him. And that's a team that should know him pretty well because he spent quite a while there. But this was his first start since 2022, and he was able to, I think, give the Braves, if he's able to do this every 5th day, especially now that, as you mentioned, the complexion of the Braves rotation has changed with the loss of Spencer Strider, which, by the way, we won't know really the full update on Spencer Strider, though we are expecting the injury to his UCL to take him out of commission or put him out of commission for the remainder of the season. We won't know more until the weekend, but either way, the Braves can't sit around thinking about that, and they also can't focus on, okay, well, now somebody's got to go out there and be Spencer Strider. That would be pretty much the exact wrong thing to do, because there are not too many pitchers like Spencer Strider. But Lopez, he's got a good arm. And he showed against the White Sox that he is capable of going out, keeping the Braves in a ball game. And if he does it against the New York Mets, he'll have a chance to win that one. Adrian Hauser spent a lot of time with the Milwaukee Brewers. He has got no record of 1.80 ERA, again, very early in the season. So obviously those numbers don't mean as much as they will in a month or 2 months or 3 months from now. And if you're one of those people that doesn't care about ERA at all, it may not matter ever. But either way, the Mets are looking for a lot of answers. I think we found that out as far as what they're trying to do in their starting rotation. They're trying to fill some holes. They went out and signed Julio Teheran just a few days ago. Adrian Hauser, another guy. It's kind of in this patchwork Mets rotation as they're just trying to get something lined up until they can get healthy.
Yeah, and the rotation's been pretty good for the Mets so far. Manaea, who the Braves are going to miss, Severino, and Adrian Hauser in his first start. Going against the Tigers, 5 innings, 3 hits, did walk 3 with just 1 earned run and 3 strikeouts. Like, he's not somebody that's typically going to rack up the swings and misses and get a bunch of strikeouts. He's a 50% ground ball pitcher. He's going to throw that sinker a lot. So again, I think it's a chance for the Atlanta Braves to kind of get on him and put up another big number. And then, like you said, with Lopez, he can do what he did against the White Sox, where I thought the command was really good. Yeah. If he can do that against this Mets team, I think it's a good chance to win this ball game. But the Mets are obviously open to get some innings out of Adrian Hauser on Tuesday and see if they can go ahead and at least earn a split of this series. But it becomes a pretty big start for Lopez because you don't know what's going to happen in the rotation on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. Fried's had his struggles to begin the season, and you got to have that command against this Mets lineup. So it becomes a pretty big start for Lopez, at least in terms of this series.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Braves clearly want to close out this homestand by winning a couple of series. Sweeping the Diamondbacks was a great way to start it, but you don't want to backslide and either split or lose a series against a Mets team that had an awful lot of trouble just getting its first win of the year. But now they've picked up a handful of those in the past week, and I won't say that they've got momentum on their side, but they were able to hold on for an 8-7 win in the opener of this series, and they will look to, as Jake pointed out, grab a split as they face Reynaldo Lopez. Adrian Hauser will be on the mound for the Braves, 7:20 the first pitch at Truist Park. Meanwhile, Truist Park was the site of, I think, all of the baseball world looking in and celebrating the legacy of Henry Aaron, one of the greatest players in all of sports and one of the greatest moments in all of sports. Happened 50 years ago on Monday. It was April 8th, 1974. In the 4th inning, as the Braves played the Dodgers, it was Henry Aaron hitting a 2-run homer off Al Downing to put him into the lead all time and make him the home run king as he passed Babe Ruth with home run number 715. Jake, you got something pretty cool. I've always got my eye on it. It's over your shoulders, that 1957 Topps Henry Aaron. Why don't you share that with us so we can take a good look at this? This is one of my all-time favorite sets.
Yeah, so I don't know if you got the glare on that or you can see it really well, but the one cool thing about this card is that you notice how he's batting there. He's batting left-handed and not right-handed in this photo, and I don't think I can get a good shot of it on there. But yeah, I love this card. It's not graded very well as the card from 1957, but it's always been one of my favorites just because it's a unique photo with him batting from the left side. But one of my favorite things I have of Hank Aaron, you can't see it with my new camera setup here, but up on the wall over here, I have a picture of him rounding second base for 715 and the 2 teenagers that come out on the field to greet him. I've always thought that was a cool moment because he didn't know at that point what they were going to do with all the death threats and everything that he was getting at that time. And I always thought that was a pretty cool moment to see those guys come out there and celebrate him and celebrate that accomplishment and what he was able to do.
Yeah, and a lot of celebrations of Hank Aaron with many of his teammates from 1974 on hand, though that number obviously has dwindled, and Hank passing away 3 years ago as well. But a lot of people, including Billy Aaron and much of the Aaron family, were also there to celebrate. And that, as you may know, you might have seen on social media, I have a few Hank Aaron cards myself. I love that 1957 Topps. I'm actually close to completing that entire set. I'm going to continue working on that. But one of my favorite Henry Aaron cards is this 1964 Topps. I love this set so much. I don't know what it was about it, but the first vintage card I ever got was a 1964 Topps. I found it at my grandparents' house, and that kind of lit the fuse for collecting baseball cards, if you want to know some trivia about me. But one of the last years in Milwaukee, Henry Aaron's cards and just the connection with that time of baseball, it just makes it fun to collect. So it was cool to be able to share a couple of pieces of our collection and fun to share with some of Hank Aaron's teammates, some of the memories that they have of not only that night, but also playing alongside one of the greatest players and what they will tell you, one of the greatest human beings you will ever meet. It happened at Truist Park on Monday night. The Braves, though, came up on the wrong end of that 8-7 score against the New York Mets. They'll look to get back on the winning track on Tuesday behind Reynaldo Lopez. That brings us to the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast. As always, we appreciate you riding along with us. We would appreciate as well if you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, turn on those alerts so you get a notification every time we drop a new episode here on the Locked On Sports Atlanta YouTube page. Also, make sure that you are subscribed to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. Once again, the Braves with an 8-7 loss in Game 1 against the Mets. They'll look to get back in the win column on Tuesday, and we will be catching you after that game. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. Until next time, so long, everyone.